Hey, this is Jess with TRACT, and in this video we're excited to show you our new QuickBooks Online integration. So if you use the enterprise version, note that everything will work pretty much the same. That integration is coming shortly after, but this is specifically ready. The online one is ready to go, and this video is about the online one. So first, how do we get started? We need to set up our TRACT account to connect to our QuickBooks Online account. And to do that, I'll show you how to do that. You will click on your company name up here in the top left, and then you should see a tab called Integrations. And you have to be a company admin to do this. And then you're going to just click on the Connect to QuickBooks. And if you're already signed in, you won't have to sign in, but if you're not signed into your online QuickBooks account, you'll need to just sign this in. And then you should get a welcome page. It might not look exactly like this because we're in a development environment here, but it should say Tract Forestry is wanting to connect to your QuickBooks account, and you're just going to say connect. And then that should bring you back to Tract, and you should say that's been successfully connected. Okay, so how does this work? We got a couple of slides to show you on the breakdown of what gets sent in Tract and how it winds up in QuickBooks. So we can look at this basically in two buckets. You got your expenses and your income. So expenses in TRACT typically or almost always get set up as a settlement statement. So think of, you're paying a logger, trucker, landowner, and you're going to create settlement statements from those tickets. And those are your vendors that are going to be on the settlement statements, and each of those tickets basically are associated with an expense account for that vendor. And so the settlement statements are going to get translated into a bill on QuickBooks. And if you're not familiar with using bills, they're basically just expenses that haven't been paid yet. So we send it over to QuickBooks as a bill, and then you can decide how you want to pay it. So you could send 10 statements over to QuickBooks, and then you could print them immediately, or you could run them in a couple of days, or you could choose one or two to pay. That's really up to you when you actually pay the bill and get the check out. So also when you first connect, or when you first send your first statements, if you have not mapped a vendor in QuickBooks to a vendor in TRACT, then you're going to be asked to select it. We're going to try to correctly guess it by the name, but if the names don't match up, then you're going to have to decide, if logger ABC is logger ABC Inc. in QuickBooks. You just have to select it, and once you do that the first time, then we're going to remember it for you so you don't have to do it again and again. Same thing with your expense accounts. You might have, for example, a login expense in TRACT, and it might be called something else in QuickBooks, but you just map it this one time, and then we're going to remember it for you. And then once you send it over, we're going to lock that settlement statement for you. And we're going to update the status to sent to QuickBooks. That way, you don't want to send bills over to QuickBooks and then have somebody make changes on them later. So this is sort of a final thing. You want to send it. Now you can, if you decide there's been a mistake or you don't want to do it, you can delete the bill and it'll roll back, and we'll go over that in just a moment. Now on the income side, you have in TRACT reconciliations and invoices. Reconciliations and invoices are very similar. The main difference is a reconciliation, somebody is telling you they're paying you. They're sending you a statement like a mill. They're typically sending a statement with an with a check, and telling you what they owe you. And it's your job to reconcile that with your records and determine if you're getting paid correctly. On the flip side, you have invoices, and this is where you might have a customer, and it's your job to create the statement or create the invoice, send it to the customer, and then you have a receivable that you are going to have to make sure that you get paid for. So both reconciliations and invoices get translated into invoices in QuickBooks, and then your mills are going to translate to customers, and of course customers in TRACT will translate to customers in QuickBooks. And one difference here is in TRACT, you just have income accounts on tickets that that record your income. But QuickBooks makes another level of distinction here. You create products and services in QuickBooks, and then those products and services are associated with income accounts. So when you are mapping, when you send a reconciliation or invoice over to QuickBooks, you're going to have to decide, okay, this income account, maybe it's a timber sale account, what product or service do I want to associate that with in QuickBooks? And when you associate it with a product or service, it ultimately gets linked to an income account as well, because product and services have to have income accounts. Okay, so let's actually see this in action. So let's go to settlement statements. We'll start there first. And you'll notice once you connect to QuickBooks, you're going to have a couple of new columns over here on your settlement statements table. One is the sent to QuickBooks, and then there's a new paid or unpaid status. And so you can see we have these three statements that are unsent. And one thing I want to point out is that the way we've done this integration is that you can do as little or as much as you want, and you don't have to do everything in TRACT to get sent over to QuickBooks. You can, choose the 90% of the straightforward ones to send over if you want, and then you don't have to send over others. So we're never going to just take a bunch of transactions in QuickBooks in TRACT and just send them over to QuickBooks. So you get the opportunity really to pick and choose those. And we hopefully made it pretty easy for you by giving you these check boxes. So if you just want to send all of them, you can check it, or if you just want to send a couple at a time, then you can do that as well. So I'm going to just do one to start with for this example. So you're going to check the statement that you want to send, and then under actions, you're going to see a new action, send to QuickBooks. And when you click that, it's going to open up a new tab. And so here's where we're going to try and match up these vendors and accounts for you. So here we have our vendor in TRACT is called Test Logger, and we need to match them to a vendor in QuickBooks. So this is going to be a drop down of all the vendors that you have set up in QuickBooks. Now I already have a vendor in QuickBooks called Test Logger, so it chose it for me, and I don't have to do anything, and I get a green checkbox, and that means that it's been matched. Likewise with the login expense, I have a login expense in my QuickBooks, and so it's been matched up. Now if you didn't have one, you would just select one, or you can actually have it create a new one if there's no match, and say you put a new landowner in TRACT that hasn't been entered into QuickBooks, then we'll create one for you. And so that option will be at the top of the select box to create a new. So I'm going to go ahead, and now I got both checkboxes here. I'm creating this, it should create a bill in QuickBooks for this 5/24/17. And I'm going to go ahead and click send. All right, and so now our QuickBooks our status has been set to sent. I have no edit button here any longer. And so now we should be able to go over and log into QuickBooks and see what actually got done. So I'm going to go to my vendors, and I'm going to look for that Test Logger. There they are. And today's date is 8/29, and here's that bill that was created for 5/24. From your vendors page, you can go to just pay bills, and then it's going to show all the open bills. Here's the one that we just created. We can check it now, and we can click to save and close. And so that's going to cut a check. The bill's been marked as paid. And if we go back to our Test Logger, we can see now our bill for 5/24 has been paid with this check number 101. There's the bill payment that shows the deduction. And if we go back to our TRACT account and we refresh this page, now we can see that our payment status has been set to paid, and we know that this statement has been sent to QuickBooks and paid. Okay, now let's go over and do a reconciliation. So we don't allow you to send reconciliations to QuickBooks until they're completed, because you don't want to send something partial over and then you're going to obviously need to add more transactions to it. So first thing you do is you have to get it to reconciled. So here I have a couple of in progress, and I think I can make this one reconciled. I'm looking for my last ticket here. This one, I'm going to check it off. Okay, now I'm reconciled, and I'm going to go back to my page, go to my completed tab, and so I can see now I have two completed reconciled reconciliations, and they're both unsent to QuickBooks. So let's send this one that we just reconciled. I'm going to send to QuickBooks. And so notice this one, it doesn't recognize the name that I have in QuickBooks. So it's asking us to select the option, and we do not have a checkbox here. So we know we need to do something. It did match, remember our products and services. So we got our timber sales account gets matched to, and I don't have any timber related products or services in my test account. So we're just going to relate it to another service called concrete. And now I need to pick my vendor. So what I would probably do here is search to see if you might have this vendor, but just under a slightly different name. So I would search for the name, and here, okay, so there's two different options, and there's New Urban Forestry New, which doesn't match New Urban Forestry Athens, and then there's just plain New Urban Forestry. So sometimes in TRACT you might have vendors split up into like specific sub vendors, but say you might always want to pay like a top level account. So you could do that here if you just want to match. You can match it up however you want. So let's say we just want to match it up to the New Urban Forestry Global account. And so now it's checked, and we can go ahead and click Send to QuickBooks. And so now this status has been updated, and we should be able to go over to QuickBooks, and now we're looking under our customers. And if we look for the New Urban, and sometimes it's hard to find. There we are. So remember we sent it to the top level one, and so that invoice we sent was dated 8/22, or the reconciliation was 8/22, and so there's the 8/22. There's the amount 3236.29, 3236.29, and the invoice has now been created. So we can send this invoice from QuickBooks. We can send it. You can send the invoice from TRACT as well. But now we know we have a record of it in QuickBooks, and when you actually receive a check for it, then you're going to receive a payment, right, to mark it as paid. So we're going to go in and we'll just manually receive the payment for this one. New Urban Forestry, here's our payment date. Let's say they sent us a check. I'm sorry, wrong one, check. Let's say it's check number this, and you can choose if you're going to deposit it later or directly into the check account. It's up to you. And it's already marking this invoice because we selected it. Now we're just going to click Save and Close. So there's been a payment recorded now in QuickBooks. Here's the payment status. Our invoice gets marked as paid too. And now if we go back to TRACT and refresh this page, we now have a paid status on this reconciliation. There's the payment date, and we also have the payment reference stored on this reconciliation. And if we click into this reconciliation, we'll see those details. So here's the payment reference that we entered in, and here's the payment date and the status of being paid. Now the invoices work the exact same way. Here we have a list of invoices. Here's one I want to send. I got my test customer, invoice number 5 in TRACT, and amount of $800. We're going to send it to QuickBooks. Notice it recognized our customer, and then our timber sales, since we already mapped it once, it's going to recognize it again. And here's our invoice number. We're going to send this to QuickBooks. And now we can go over to QuickBooks and find our test customer. Here they are. Now one thing to note as well is that we allow QuickBooks to assign the invoice number in QuickBooks. So the numbers in TRACT is not going to match the number in QuickBooks. We did that on purpose because you have a sequence number in QuickBooks that you probably want to maintain, and there's a sequence number in TRACT that you want to maintain. But we do pass that along to QuickBooks so that you can reference it in your line items. So if we find that invoice, which we were sending this invoice September 29th is the due date, and so today is August the 29th, and it's for $800. We could probably find that amount. There it is, August 29th for $800. And if we click into it, then notice here we're going to say this is a reference to track invoice number 005 with this date, and there's our product or service that we referenced, and there's the amount for that line item. And likewise, we can receive this payment. We'll do another check, and we'll go ahead and make sure that invoice was marked. Yep, it's that one, so we're going to save it. And now if we go back to QuickBooks and refresh, it shows that our sent to QuickBooks and our paid status and our paid date. Okay, now let's take a look at what happens when QuickBooks sends back information. We just saw this happen. When you mark a bill as paid in QuickBooks, then it's going to send the payment date and the payment reference back to TRACT. It's going to update the paid status. It's going to update the payment date and the payment reference on the statement. Same thing with income. When you receive a payment in QuickBooks and you put in that payment date and the payment reference, that information is going to be sent back to TRACT, and it's going to update the invoice or reconciliation, its paid status, payment date, and the payment reference. Now, what happens if you need to make a change or you delete the payment in QuickBooks? Then this is what's going to happen. So if you delete a bill payment, then it's going to basically just roll back the change that happened when you created the payment. It's going to change the paid status back to unpaid. It's going to remove the payment date, and it's going to remove the payment reference. The same thing, if you delete a payment received in QuickBooks, then it's going to roll those back. It's going to set the paid status to unpaid. It's going to remove the payment date and the payment reference. So let's do that. Okay, so here's our, we're in settlement statements. We're going to go view this bill that was paid, and we want to, here's our payment number 105, bill payment for test logger. And what happens if we delete this payment? We decided we made a mistake, or for some reason we need to remove it. So that removed the bill, the bill payment in TRACT, in QuickBooks. And then if we go update this page, now our payment status is back to unpaid. And then let's go back one more step, and if we take a look at our notes, what happens if you delete a bill? Then it's going to change the sent to QuickBooks to not sent. Same thing with invoices. If you delete an invoice in QuickBooks, then it's going to set the status in QuickBooks to not sent. And that's basically just rolls back the changes that happened in the first place when you sent it to QuickBooks. So let's see what happens. Here's our bill that was created, and we can delete this. And now if we go back to our bill and refresh the page, it's now back to unsent. So we're back to where we started. Okay, that concludes our video on QuickBooks Online integration. We hope you get a chance to try it out. And as always, let us know if you have any questions or if you want some help getting it set up.